Dopamine. Let's talk about this wonderful, intriguing, and extremely poorly misunderstood little molecule and how this works in your brain. We're going to talk about how it influences motivation, reward, reinforcement, whatever we want to call it, and behavior in general. So dopamine is an incredibly essential molecule in all human function. It is the chemical which is deficient in the brains of people with ADHD. It's why the medications prescribed for ADHD, the psychostimulant medications, they act on dopamine. They increase the available dopamine to simplify things, basically. So ADHD people don't have enough dopamine, oversimplified, but basically. And the medication that they take enhances the dopamine available, and the consequences of that are phenomenal benefits to organization, to memory, to behaviors, and doing the things that you should be doing, and also finding it easier to not do the things that you shouldn't be doing. So dopamine has a core action and relationship in action, in doing things. And this is what's really important. Now, one thing that people often get confused with dopamine is that they think that it's about reward. And it is very firmly not about reward, it is about reinforcement. Chemicals that are related to reward would be chemicals that make you feel good when you do certain things, when you have a bar of chocolate, when you, let's stick with the G-rated examples for now. When you do something that feels good, then a chemical is released in your brain, generally, largely oxytocin. And that is a thing that feels rewarding, it feels good, and the release of that, our body, our brain then goes, I like how that felt when this chemical was released by the actions that I took. Let's hardwire and reinforce me doing those actions again. And the chemical responsible for reinforcing things, that's dopamine. Now, dopamine acts primarily to reinforce the behaviors that are interpreted as desirable, we could say, but unfortunately this runs on some pretty primitive wiring. An unfortunate example of this is how, things like gambling or, drugs. They feel good. Or even, look, a better and more unexpected but potentially useful example, interpersonal conflict. Arguing, fighting with your loved one, with your spouse. It feels awful, and then when it gets resolved, your body experiences this release of tension and goes, that was great, whatever we did, let's do that again. But it doesn't just wire the making up, the kissing and making up part, and says, let's do that. It says, let's do the whole piece again, because at the end of the whole cycle of terrible, awful conflict and heated argument, and then kissing and making up, at the end of that, did we eventually feel this phenomenal release and feel better? So the brain releases dopamine and says, let's do that again. And that's part of why you'll find yourself arguing spontaneously out of the blue when everything's fine, but you just can't leave something alone and you don't know why. Because you've hardwired and reinforced not just the relief from the argument, but the entire cycle that led to that ultimately positive experience. Dopamine is very important. Now, what else do we need to understand? Very important thing about dopamine is especially that it is released in response to things that we do, or things that we receive. For example, if I'm given a gift, I'm going to feel good, I'm going to have a release of dopamine, but it's not necessarily because having the gift felt good. It's going to reinforce and rewire the act of, being nice and receiving gifts. That's a thing that we want to be getting more of, is the act of receiving gifts. And part of the problem is, often people do not understand dopamine and their relationship with it. Because the most important thing to know about it is it's not just that having more is means you have a better response. what we're actually looking for is a difference, a raising or a lowering of the dopamine compared to before. You know, if you had dopamine levels like through the roof, like I'll go here, and then something happened that released a tiny bit more, and it was just like the smallest jump, like tiny bit, you're not going to feel a very big difference. And it's not going to reinforce the behavior very strongly. But if your levels are super low and you do something that raises them quite a lot, then that behavior that resulted in that big raise, that's what's going to be reinforced. Even though actually going from here to here is nowhere near as like good as being up there. Now there's some really complex things here that I'm being forced to gloss over. But the idea is that we respond and we reinforce and rewire behaviors in response to the fluctuations in dopamine. And one of the really effective ways to screw this up is by making sure you reward yourself or you receive a reward every single time that you do a certain behavior, or even worse, in your kids. If every single time that your kids clean their room or complete a homework assignment, then you give them, I don't know, a lolly, a treat, take them to the Macca's, whatever. Give them a gift whenever they do that good thing. Well, they're going to only do that good thing when they're expecting that specific reward. And after not too much time at all, if the reward doesn't come, their likelihood of doing that task in future is absolutely plummets. And that's because the dopamine that got released when they received the reward, eventually it reaches this flat level that's what's expected each time that they do the homework and they get the treat. It always goes here, so that's not remarkable anymore. And so if they don't get the treat, well, it will be lower, and that's worse, so let's not do that behavior at all. And then if we do get the treat, well, that's baseline, that's normal, that's how it should be. We won't be doing extra reinforcement. And so this is why when we reward people for doing well, we need to do it sort of spontaneously and kind of randomly. Like, hey, for the last few weeks, you've been working really hard. Here's a trip to, here's a gift, here's a present that I got you. Randomly, just to vaguely tune up the whole complex of you doing well. Not every time you do well, I get you this gift. Not good. And it's why, and I hope this is making sense. Another aspect of this is how, look, our nervous system, it's designed to detect difference. It's very hard for you to just say, this is my temperature. But you can definitely walk into a room and say, that room is hotter or colder than the one I just came out of. Our nervous system is designed to detect difference, and that includes difference in dopamine levels. This is what's really important. So it's not just about having high levels and high reward and high stimulation all the time. It's about ensuring that we peak those things in response to behaviors that we've previously done that we want to reinforce, but that we don't do that every single time, or that becomes the baseline and the default, and we'll need to go to higher extremes to get the reinforcement above that. Does this make sense? I really hope it does. And if it doesn't, let me know in the comments below which parts I need to explain a bit more clearly, because I want you to get this, and I'm confident that I can communicate this to you properly. And part of the reason I'm saying that is, for now, I'm feeling this is the best job that I could do explaining some of these concepts on a surface level. So I'll be wrapping up the video very shortly. And if you like this video, you like my style, or you found this information useful or interesting, make sure you hit like and hit subscribe, because I make a new video every single day. And so I will be making a new video where I talk about something hopefully equally or even more useful to you tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this helped, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.